comes with many habits, very little ego deflection, even as you continue beyond your original target. The reason starting is the hardest part is because it carries the brunt of the weight of the commitment once we started. We feel as if we need to finish our original intentions to count it as a success. This is why we tend not to start a project that intimidates us. We rather not start if we won't finish. This is why mini habit is so small. This is why many habits are so easy. The total intention is so small. There's no risk of quitting too early. By starting small and entering the reality of doing the work, your mind will see that one small step is not as difficult as it first seems. And that taking the next step, it isn't difficult either. Negative effect simply means the experience of unpleasant feelings. It clearly played a role in the chocolate and radish study. Participants were tempted by the sight and smell of chocolate and were given the less desirable radishes. Being tempted with chocolate only to be denied even a taste was a very negative experience, perhaps more than we think. Imagine someone presenting you with cookies and then withholding them. Act as many habits are for adding good things. Negative effect is less relevant unless your action is directly replacing another pleasure. Eating radishes alone won't deplete willpower, for example, but when just opposed against chocolatey goodness, you bet they will. Result with many habits, typically no ego depletion, even if you are replacing a pleasure with a mini habit. The commitment is so small that you won't feel negative effect from it. More often you will be replacing time wasting behavior with beneficial one, which induce a positive feeling. Subjective fatigue, this is an interesting one, isn't it? It doesn't say fatigue, it says subjective fatigue, implying that we are not completely objective in our assessment of our own fatigue. It turns out that willpower is a battle of the mind, and according to the sum of these top willpower drainers, the battle appears to be between the perception of your strength relative to your thoughts. Many habits thankfully come with a mini amount of the subjective fatigue. Subjective fatigue depends on many factors, and a big one is how you see yourself stacking up against your goal. I've noticed that when my goal is large, my subjective fatigue worsen. This is logically as the mind looks ahead to the upcoming work and perhaps feels the impact early. A recent study found that our imaginations are so powerful that they can change what we physically see and hear in the real world. So it is not at all a stretch to think that expecting a heavy workload can impact our energy levels too. This idea was also supported by researchers in the meta-analysis who noted expecting further act of self-control exacerbated the effect of ego deflections. I noticed that when my goal become just one push-up, my subjective fatigue shrank. In fact, I felt I had a plenty of energy to do a single push-up, and the thought that I could easily do something, albeit small, was energizing. Result with many habits, nothing can completely take away subjective fatigue, but many habits mitigate it very well in relation to your mini goals. You may feel a sense of empowerment and energy. Even when I've been exhausted subjectively, I've still felt sufficiently energized to just read 2 pages or write 50 words. If you are wondering about the value in only doing that much, it's high and it's covered later. Blood glucose level. Glucose sugar is your primary energy source. If you have low glucose in your blood, you are going to feel very tired. If it's dangerously low, you can even pass out. Your blood sugar levels are determined by genetics, diet, and lifestyle. As for many habits, they are independent of your blood sugar, but they can help to preserve it by being the most efficient way to spend your willpower energy. It is far more mentally energy efficient to break things down into small components that are easily mentally digested and less stressful. The goal of losing 100 pounds in a year is a constant energy drain and burden, and with this goal, it's possible to lose 50 pounds and feel like a failure. Why would anyone be interested in that? One workout feels like a drop in the bucket, and it is in the grand scheme of your massive goal. It's hard to feel good after a workout when it's presents almost nothing compared to your goal. With many habits too, willpower is preserved as much as possible. Every step you take feels like success, and going beyond your goal feels even better than that. It's a system that makes you feel like a winner because people who feel like winner act like winner. Results with many habits. While blood sugar levels are independent of many habits, the fact that they are energy efficient, willpower efficient, and empowering psychologically preserve blood sugar as much as any goal habit strategy could. And if you're tired from low blood sugar, many habits give you the best chance to take action anyway. How many habits expand your comfort zone? Right now, you have a comfort zone. Imagine it is a circle. You are the most comfortable inside of this circle, but outside of it are some of your desired goal. Outside the lines, you might see yourself physically fit and weighing less. You might envision book you have written or book you like to read, a happier vision of you with fewer negative thought, a version of you who cooks more meals at home, and whatever else you are interested in empowering, improving. These are the outside of your comfort circle because they require some discomfort to achieve due to straying from your basal ganglia current routines. The common way people go about this change is diving in and trying whatever it takes to succeed. The strategy, this is like sprinting well outside of your comfort circle, fighting to stay there. That's when your subconscious brain say this is interesting, but I am really uncomfortable with this huge change, and it forces you back inside your comfort circle when your motivation and willpower can no longer support you out there. Many habits are like walking to the outer edge of your circle and taking one step outside of the boundary. You are in less comfortable territory here, but not by much because you know taking one step back will put you back inside your comfort circle, and maybe for the first few times you will step right back inside your comfort circle, only meeting your mini requirement. But when you are continue to step outside the circle, your subconscious will get comfortable with it and your circle will expand, and you're taking about a mini habit forming here. These expansions, unlike the sprint in the pure examples, can permanently change your boundaries, and it is a magic bullet of mini habit because while I hope you get the urge to explore your outer boundaries after you take that first step outside, even if you don't, you will eventually from a comfortable habit of taking that first step into a new behavior. This serve as the best possible foundation for further steps and personal growth in that area. In the case of push up, the common mini habit is to do one every day. This small step creates a much broader effect than you think because not only will you become comfortable with the idea of doing one push up, you will also be more comfortable with push ups in general and with doing them every day. This is going to make scaling up a breeze, really. And this is the absolute worst case scenario of the mini habit system, in that you never do extra. Chances are that you will do extra sometimes, and the reason relate to basic physics. Newton first law states that point number one, an object that is at rest will stay at rest unless an external force acts upon it. Point two, an object that is in motion will not change its velocity unless an external force acts upon it. Can you see how this relates? Once you take the step, you are officially in motion. You will find, as I have, and the Newton law suggests for physics anyway, that once you get started, it is almost as hard to stop as it is to keep going. And add to this that nothing is more motivating and inspiring than seeing yourself taking action, put it together, and we get a new equation. One small step plus desired behavior equal to high probability of further step. The two movements of resistance. I remember living in Virginia with a cat when it snowed. We naturally wanted to see how our indoor cat liked the snow. Cats don't like water, but do they like fluffy frozen water? Nope. First attempt, we walk out in the yard and toss her into the snow. Failure, she would stand there motionless and confused for 3 seconds and quickly race back inside a disapproval. Second attempt, later day, we place her on the outskirts of the snow. Success, she actually walk around in it and explore some. Your brain is just another cat in the snow, and you can quote me on that because I love out of the context codes, spring massive changes on it, and it will run back to its comfortable routines, but introduce change gently and a small does, and it might be curious, not scared to explore them more. Your brain is programmed to resist change, but most of that resistance comes at two particular movement. Resistance before action. Think of yourself as a ball resting on a track, or as Newton law states, an object that is at rest. Motivational technique insists that you get motivated before you move, but isn't it easier just to move forward 1 centimeter and let momentum help you out? Yes, yes, it is. It's much easier. Move yourself slightly forward to get rolling. Once you are rolling, the equation changes to a more favorable physics formula. An object that is in motion will not change its velocity unless external force act upon it. We want to be in motions in the direction of our goals as much and as frequently as possible. To do this, we need the first action to be really easy, because that is the first wall of resistance in any task, starting in the hardest part. But that doesn't mean it has to be hard to start. Hardest is relative. When the first action is just a nudge, initially resistance shrinks. Once you take actions, there is a second wave of resistance. The strength of this second wave depends on how much of the impact your first step had, which varies resistance to do more. The mini habit strategy addresses the first instance of internal resistance by requiring small steps to start and by making the total requirement too easy to fail. It keeps you from getting overwhelmed and racing back to your old routines like a cat in the snow. But once you start, there's another waves of resistance. In my experience, taking that step, first step, often completely shatters this second level of resistance, especially once you have had some practice. But starting out, it was far less frequent. Can you guess why? Think about the brain. The resistance isn't a mystery, it's a subconscious conflict with my typical behavior. The basal ganglia can be fooled into not resisting the first step, but it still knows what it it wants when you attempts to do more. So when the first step isn't enough to break the resistance, you can take another. The basal ganglia doesn't care to defend against a small step. Only drastic changes by changing slowly and taking it one step at a time. You're playing by your own brain rules. So when I kept setting mini goals in the one push up challenge, by brain tolerated it. But once I thought about doing even a 10 minutes chunk, my brain said, no, absolutely not. Play video games, young man, you're grounded. So I said, but can I just get the exercise mat out? And it said, yes, you know the rest. If you ever in a situation where you like to do more than your minimum requirement, simply continue to use small steps if necessary, but do not come to expect this every time your requirement is small for all of the reasons you're discussing. You don't want to jeopardize your long-term success for a short-term gain. I don't want to scare you into doing too little either. I'll just say this: if your requirement is small on paper and in your mind, you're fine. Now let's take a closer look at how many habits work in the movement. Many habits in the movement. We just talk about the two occasions that we met resistance before and during a task or project. Now I want to discuss both common forms of resistance. The mental and physical motivation can overcome resistance consistently. It is sometimes solutions. The slogan for motivation should be the code for the from the movie Encore and Sherman. 60% of the time it works every time. It isn't just motivation through using willpower recklessly is equally effective. Ineffective smart willpower management is key to personal development. As smart money management is the key to financial success, people working relatively low paying jobs have become millionaires through smart money management, while super athletes making millions of dollars every year have gone bankrupt. If you don't plan your action strategy out, you will flip flop between poor willpower and motivation strategies and end up frustrated. Here's how many habits overcome mental and physical barriers. I'll use exercise as example since it is such a common desire. Scenario one, you have energy to exercise but don't want to do it. Mental barrier. Since you are going to skip motivations, we are left with using willpower, but instead of saying you have to do a full workout, we'll just say that you have to do one push-ups. It requires as you have energy. In this scenario, this isn't a big deal, and once you start, you're going to find the motivation kick in most of the time. You don't want to exercise right now in this scenario, but you do want to exercise generally in life. These are the conflicting desires between present movement feelings and your life values. When you do the first push up, your life values will often inspire you and overtake your peer hesitation. If not, you may have to set a few more micro goals like I did in the first one push up challenge. But as you lead yourself along, your mind will adjust to what the body is doing, and each small step you take will make your long-term healthy perspective more appealing. In the willpower section, we saw how willpower depends greatly on the perception, on the difficulty of the task, and when you start stupid small, the perceived difficulty and willpower costs drop drastically. Once you take the first step, your brain is forced to calculate the true difficulty of what a full workout would be like instead of a biased, lazy brain projecting it to be torturous. If you ever found yourself thinking it wasn't so bad after a workout or trying a new exercise, you're already familiar with this phenomena.